The purpose of this presentation is to correct and counter an inaccurate one-sided narrative that has been circulating since September 12, 2019, and has recently come up in the local media.
Just a little quick background about the Liberties Institute. I mentioned that I'm an advisory board member. We were founded by Dr. Garrett and a handful of faculty a little over a year ago, largely in reaction to increasing calls to censor people on campus, as well as in reaction to an endless parade of taxpayer-funded speakers assailing Western ideals and berating the free market.
Over the course of my tenure at Bakersfield College, I've brought a variety of public humanities programs to campus, funded by both taxpayer-supported agencies and private foundations. All of this programming, whether public or privately supported, has always been nonpartisan and educational only, in accordance with both KCCD and various grant agency policy. None of the speakers involved, quote, assailed Western ideals or berated the free market, end quote.
In April of 2019, unauthorized stickers appeared around campus, including one damaging or vandalizing an event posters. The stickers contained phrases that some would say challenged ideas increasingly officially endorsed and espoused by Bakersfield College. Other faculty members described the stickers as racist, given their site of origin, and the vandalism as a hate crime. These faculty pressured campus administration to take official action.
This comment implies that reporting faculty were the driving force behind the administration's response to the stickers. Concerned faculty reported vandalism that mostly targeted promotional materials and posters that featured persons of color and contained problematic messaging, and a web address that led to a collection of content that included overtly racist, white supremacist, and sexist messages. Though there were calls for some response from the administration, they did not act at the behest of the reporting faculty.
As a result, a controversy erupted when my colleague, Dr. Garrett, publicly questioned the atypical behavior of our college administration. He questioned whether the stickers actually might be protest speech, protesting the use of taxpayer funds to push a one-sided partisan agenda on our campus.
The stickers posted by the 100-handers and groups like the Proud Boys at Bakersfield College were vandalism, not free speech. There's clear policies and procedures that govern how campus groups and organizations, even outside organizations, can and cannot post materials on campus. These approved campus procedures were not followed. Moreover, in reference to any programming that I've been associated with organizing that utilize taxpayer resources, none of that programming reflects a, quote, one-sided political agenda, end quote, and is by definition nonpartisan and educational only in accordance with KCCD and grant agency policies.
Faculty administrators of the BC Social Justice Institute and student authors closely aligned with them responded with defamatory public and private accusations about Dr. Garrett, referring to him as an apologist for white supremacy and characterizing me as somebody who wishes to engage white supremacist ideas on campus.
The idea that the Bakersfield College Social Justice Institute made public remarks against Dr. Garrett or Professor Miller is not true. I never issued a public statement challenging Professor Miller or Dr. Garrett's editorials as a faculty member or an interested community member. If an individual faculty member at Bakersfield College or a student at Bakersfield College chose to engage Dr. Garrett or Professor Miller's public editorials, they did so under their own will or desire to engage in a public debate.
Additionally, I did not defame Dr. Garrett in my opinion piece in the Californian that responded to his original Community Voices article, and neither did anyone else for that matter. If any of the media pieces released in response to Dr. Garrett or Professor Miller's writings rose to the level of libel or defamation, I'm sure that lawsuits or complaints would have been filed, but none were.
Campus faculty, students, and our community engaged in this debate in our local newspaper. Dr. Reggie Williams, Dr. Nick Strobel invited Matt Garrett and Professor Andrew Bond, one of the individuals arguing the other side, to host a public formal debate on campus. What a better example of intellectual rigor than to have two professors discuss the merits of censorship and free speech. Dr. Garrett readily agreed. Professor Bond sent a list of several stipulations. Dr. Garrett agreed to all of them. I think there were 8.
In a May 23, 2019 email to the organizers of the event and to Dr. Garrett, I submitted 6 suggestions which included recommendations like making this a panel-style debate that would include some student voices as well as a more diverse group of speakers. While some of my suggestions were considered, they were not ultimately agreed upon, as Miller states.
A few days later, Professor Bond regretfully informed those involved that he'd be unable to participate because he was too busy. He teaches a lot of classes.
Just over 2 weeks after my email offering suggestions, on June 8, 2019, I wrote the organizers to withdraw because I was busy in general, but I was also too busy to prepare for an event that was quickly shifting focus. Dr. Garrett was seeking budgets from the Director of Equity at the time, and I realized that the ensuing debate would be encompassing much more than free speech, and likely things that I could not speak to with any direct or comprehensive knowledge. And on top of that, he wanted to change the terms and format of the event after we had a meeting with the organizers and already set them, asking for more time than that was agreed upon for opening remarks. I was overwhelmed already at that point, and thus I backed out.
So Dr. Williams, ever eager for us all to debate each other philosophically, reached out to instructor Octavio Barajas, inviting him to engage the topic, as Barajas was the one who led the call for campus members to report each other to campus law enforcement for inappropriate comments. Barajas declined.
At the time, Octavio Barajas was an adjunct instructor in the history department at Bakersfield College. As an adjunct instructor, he was not expected nor paid anything outside of his regular teaching assignment. He nevertheless demonstrated great leadership and voluntary service to Bakersfield College by serving as a faculty advisor to MEChA, a registered student organization. He notified the campus administration about the vandalism of posters advertising the Jess Nieto Memorial Conference, a MEChA-sponsored event that he organized. He was not responsible for the campus's administration's response to the stickers, nor did he, quote, lead the charge for us to report each other for inappropriate comments, end quote. Any calls for campus members to report suspicious activity in the wake of the vandalism originated with the BC administration and the Office of Student Life.
Dr. Williams reached out to the original founder of the BC Social Justice Institute, Dr. Oliver Rosales.
The Social Justice Institute was founded by then BC President Sonia Christian, Dean Manny Mortanos, and Dean Corny Rodriguez in partnership with community members like Mayor Harvey Hall, philanthropist Milt Younger, and retired faculty member Jack Brigham. It was only after the administration and its partners initially formed the Institute that Dr. Rosales was asked to be the faculty coordinator for it. He was not a founder of the Social Justice Institute.
Rosales agreed, tentatively, saying that the date would need to be changed, pushed back a week till next Thursday, and that it really depended, because I don't know if you know, but faculty at BC are very busy. So somebody saying they're too busy is really a legitimate reason. He said he would only be able to participate if he received his previously requested reduction to teaching load. Despite receiving that reduction to his teaching load, he withdrew.
Professor Miller should have checked in with me before publicly discussing my teaching assignment. To be clear, I requested a reduced teaching load based on banked time, I had accumulated from teaching overloads in previous semesters and compensation I was to receive for grant writing. Depending on the outcome of my request to the administration, I was not sure of my Tuesday and Thursday night schedule for the fall 2019 term. Due to this unpredictability, I was hesitant to commit to any Tuesday or Thursday public speaking engagements, as the planning committee had been considering in email correspondence. I never withdrew from the event because I never agreed to participate on the proposed date. The event was scheduled on Thursday, September 12th without my consult or input, and the organizers never followed up with me via email to schedule a date or time that worked for my schedule, even though I offered September 19th as an option. Given Professor Miller's characterization of my schedule during Dr. Garrett's talk, audience members were led to believe that I purposely avoided engaging Dr. Garrett and that I had misled her and others associated with the event with respect to my schedule.
And instead hired a speaker for the exact same night he suggested for the debate to speak about white supremacy and the California Republican Party.
Dr. Rosales did not hire Sean Schwaller, but rather invited him to campus to speak on an article he had published in Boom, California, a peer-reviewed journal published by the University of California Press. His visit was sponsored by our valued community partners at Kern News. His article was inspired by reporting of The Guardian that concluded that Kern County's law enforcement entities were the deadliest in the nation per capita. This was the topic of his talk. Professor Miller misstated the topic when she said that he was presenting on white supremacy and California's Republican Party.
The EOP&S program provides a variety of services for students who are disadvantaged. Book vouchers worth hundreds of dollars. In fact, just last summer, I believe they gave a $475 check to everyone at EOP&S just because.
This particular clip was eventually edited out of later versions of the video of Dr. Garrett's talk because those running EOP&S informed Dr. Garrett that his statement about the program and its disbursement of aid mischaracterized and diminished the importance of their work. It is important to include, even though it has since been edited out, because it helps illustrate the pattern of inaccuracies and falsehoods presented in Dr. Garrett's talk.
A local activist who also teaches a couple classes for us, and for the last year or two has been the MEChA advisor, Octavio Barajas, sent out an email to 11 recipients titled, "Hate Vandalism on the Panorama Campus," entrenching that notion that it must be hate, right? And you gotta wonder why. I mean, who are these 11 people? Why would he need to send this email out? I mean, public safety already knows about it. Who are the 11 people? Well, it's a few of the EOP&S office folks who knew about this, were upset about this, rightfully so. It was a few administrators all the way to the top, vice president, and it was also a handful of completely unrelated Social Justice Institute folks. Why are they being involved? Well, because there's a wrong that must be corrected, right? That's what social justice is about.
Octavio Barajas is first and foremost an educator. He was a lecturer in history at BC several years ago and is now a full-time tenure-track professor of ethnic studies at College of the Sequoias. The reason Octavio included myself and Dr. Rosales in correspondences of vandalism was because the Social Justice Institute was a co-sponsor of the Jess Nieto conference.
What if we look at MEChA? MECha's documents are the most racist and disgusting documents on this campus. They talk about expelling the capachos and the gringos and making a race-based nation of brown people. What the hell is that? That is racist. That's like Make America White Again.
MEChA is an officially registered student organization with the BC Student Government Association. Founded originally in the late 1960s during the height of the Chicano Civil Rights Movement, Dr. Garrett's comment is presumably referring to a Plan de Santa Barbara or other founding movement documents originated by student activists during an era of more rigid forms of racial discrimination and exclusion, particularly within the educational system. As a student organization, MEChA has evolved the past half century, particularly with the end of the Vietnam War and the advancement of civil and educational rights afforded to ethnic Mexicans in the United States. much of which is owed to the activism of the Chicano movement, including student activists. The founding documents Dr. Garrett refers to in his talk are representative of a historical era, rather than constituting a governing set of principles by which the Bakersfield College Student Club MEChA is governed.
To state that MECha's documents are the most racist and disgusting documents on this campus, and then refer to the broader organization's founding statements from the 1960s, does two things. One, it wrongly conflates a historic document and viewpoint with the present day ideals of the organization. And two, specifying that these documents are, quote, on this campus, implies that the BC chapter of MEChA adheres to racist and disgusting ideals, close quote. The mission of our campus MEChA chapter, as stated on the BC Student Org webpage, states, quote, "We are a diverse organization of students celebrating members Chicano/Chicana or otherwise Latin American heritage and background, united with the common purpose and goal of promoting educational achievement and advancement through higher education and community involvement. Our purpose is to empower students of all backgrounds pursuing excellence and leadership in order to truly make a difference for the people of our communities. There is nothing, quote, racist or disgusting, close quote, about that."
Somebody leaked to Eyewitness News very early on, April 29, 30 or so, that there were racist stickers on campus, hoping that the news would do a piece on it, right? Don't know who that person was. Somebody did. Then, Octavio Barajas and Oliver Rosales wrote, they were the prime resources for the Renegade Rip article, which again tried to make the focus white supremacists on campus. Then Oliver Rosales reached out to Kern Soul News and asked them to tried to get them to make an article about white racists on campus. It's like someone's trying to make the media tell a certain narrative, isn't it?
The spring of 2019 witnessed a series of episodes of racial violence across the United States. The recent rise of white nationalism is well documented by historians, including most recently in Kathleen Belew's award-winning book, Bring the War Home, The White Power Movement and Paramilitary America, published by Harvard Press in 2019. When vandals placed white supremacist stickers over public events organized by student clubs and organizations at Bakersfield College in April 2019, particularly clubs and organizations designed to enhance the success of students of color, this was an important issue that needed to be shared across our campus community. I thank all local media outlets for any coverage rendered to that important issue. Student safety comes first.
Andrew Bond, one of our Social Justice Institute fellows. He works in the Social Justice Institute, gets paid by it.
I do not work for or get paid by the Social Justice Institute. I am an employee of the Kern Community College District, and I am paid by it, even when the compensation is for directing grant work associated with the National Endowment for the Humanities funded project, Energizing Humanities in California's San Joaquin Valley.
Christine Cruz Boone wrote a letter to the editor, similar argument. She said, "I fear that Professor Garrett has amplified the voice of the white supremacists." Now, I didn't know who she was, so I had to Google her. She is a local yoga instructor that teaches a couple adjunct classes for us. I don't know her. I don't know.
Like the statement on EOP&S, this clip was eventually cut from the video of Dr. Garrett's talk. It mischaracterized Dr. Cruz Boone, who was a full-time tenure-track faculty member at the time of the talk. Dr. Garrett claims to not know Dr. Cruz Boone, but as this photo shows, they were both members of the first annual faculty cohort that participated in NEH programming together. Dr. Garrett eventually apologized for misrepresenting Dr. Cruz Boone's position in the college, though he blamed the error on search results.
Then here's the really interesting one. Paige Atkinson, former BC student I've never met, writes an article for the Kern Soul News where she calls me, personally, an apologist for white supremacy. And then she republishes it in the Bakersfield Californian, which is a no-no, by the way. You're not supposed to republish things like that usually, but either her or the Californian, somebody decided to go ahead and do it without the other knowing. Calling me an apologist. And you might say, did she really say that, Professor Garrett? Yes, she did, because someone challenged her on Facebook, and she replied back, I didn't call Dr. Garrett a white supremacist. I called him an apologist. Remember, the internet is forever. Ah, then Aaron. Aaron Miller at this point says, okay, hold on. Pots and kettles, guys. Like, you got to hold the same standard, whether it's a white group that's got some questionable documents or a MEChA that's got some questionable. Let's have the same standard. And then Miguel Nidver, I don't know who he is. He's a local community member, former school teacher, never heard of him before. But he writes an article saying, this sounds a lot like Black Lives Matter stickers. I don't know why we're calling this racist. I mean, they're obviously feeling threatened, whoever these white kids are, or whoever they are, but he's, okay. And then we get a couple months later an anonymous article in the Kern News from, claims to be from MEChA, but it's anonymous. Now, at this point, you might say, well, Professor Garrett, you wanted open debate. You got it, right? We haven't opened it, sort of. I mean, I'm saying let's discuss it. They're saying don't discuss it. But there is some community. It looks like an organic discussion, right? Until you follow the money.
At the time of Dr. Garrett's talk, Paige Atkison was a current BC student, and she had every right to publish op-eds in multiple media outlets in response to Dr. Garrett's piece. Any public discussion or debate that ensued in the media following Dr. Garrett's editorial regarding vandalism at Bakersfield College was driven by the individual desire or will of faculty or students to participate in a public dialogue. Most importantly, at no time were grant funds directed by anyone at BC used to publish editorials related to vandalism on campus.
So, Kern News, right? Where's it at? This story was made possible with a grant from California Humanities in partnership with Bakersfield College. That's the byline. I thought, who at Bakersfield College is my institution calling me a white supremacist apologist? Which we all know is pretty similar to just saying you're a white supremacist.
Being referred to as an apologist or defender of the First Amendment rights of an alleged white supremacist vandal is not the same as being called a white supremacist.
Much of Dr. Garrett's focus during his presentation focused on the editorial published by Bakersfield College student journalist Paige Atkison. Let's listen to Paige recount her understanding of the events that transpired during the spring of 2019.
There had been an incident at my college campus where vandals were plastering stickers with white supremacist phrases and ideology across posters for events that involved people of color on newspaper kiosks. A professor from the school wrote an opinion piece in our local paper defending the vandalism as free speech. I, in response, wrote my own opinion editorial piece for South Kern Soul, which was later published in the local paper, where I raised the question of, is it free speech if it's, first of all, if it's illegal, and if it can harm others or incite violence. I was publicly accused of defamation on school campus and on a local radio show. The response from the community tended to be far more positive than the hatred that I was getting from a few individuals. So it led me to continue in my reporting and stand by what I said.
What's going on? I asked our director of PR, has our brand been hijacked, or did our college call me a white supremacist apologist? So she investigated, and they changed the byline to read, it was made by the California Humanities in partnership with Bakersfield College Foundation with the Virginia Alfred Harrell Foundation. That's who paid for it. Now that doesn't appear on any of their other articles. They never say who paid for it. Why do you think they included who paid for it this time? Was there an attempt to maybe make it look like an institutional, everybody thinks he's a white supremacist, I don't know. So then the problem they made though is they listed the grant, and I looked it up. If you look up that grant, yes indeed, Alfred and Virginia Harrell gave $20,000 to Bakersfield College Foundation. That money is managed by an account manager. That account manager gives it to Kern News, who publishes whatever they want or whatever the account manager wants. They're on their payroll.
Kern News is not on Bakersfield College's payroll, and there is no account manager that has discretionary control of disparate grant funding who is funneling it to partisan groups or using it to push a political agenda.
They publish things like pro-social justice articles, pro-Octavio Barajas and Oliver Rosales articles, several puff pieces on them, how wonderful they are for the community. They write a bunch of left-wing stuff. I mean, it's pro-immigration. That's okay. I mean, we have MSNBC, we have Fox News. You can have political views in news. That happens, right? As long as it's your own money and not paid for and endorsed by the state, right?
Throughout his presentation, Dr. Garrett conflates both public and private funding sources, emphasizing repeatedly the misuse of public taxpayer resources. The funds that supported the Democracy and Informed Citizenship Student Fellowship Program came from private foundation sources, not public taxpayer resources. Thus, there is no, quote, endorsement from the state, end quote, to quote Dr. Garrett's characterization. The audience is misled to believe that the activities being funded are done so by taxpayer resources and not private funding sources. Dr. Garrett should have contacted myself or Professor Bond for information to clarify any potential errors before his talk and not via email days after he had already made inaccurate and false statements on campus in front of students, staff, and members of the public.
And they also wrote the defamation of both myself and then Baron Miller as well. The MEChA piece said that she wants to talk with white supremacists and advocate those views.
If any of the content published in Kern News or the Bakersfield Californian actually rose to the level of defamation, complaints and/or lawsuits would have been filed claiming libel, but no such complaints or suits were filed. I did not defame Dr. Garrett or Dr. Miller, nor did any other respondents in the media. I encourage everyone to read the articles in question.
So, who's this account manager, right? It's account number 220-76800. Do you want to know, like, who's paying for hit pieces? All right. You have to find out yourself. Then look back at this page. You start to follow that money. This person's paying for these articles.
In an email sent subsequent to his public presentation on September 12th, Dr. Garrett expresses his belief that Oliver Rosales is in fact the account manager he identified during his talk. As state employees, our emails on district servers are public documents, and the statement in this correspondence directly disproves any claim that Dr. Rosales was not named as responsible for the alleged misuse of funds. To add to this point, an August 6, 2020 memo from the district office about the status of our complaints noted that, quote, Dr. Garrett, in a complaint filed subsequent to his initial statements made in the talk, alleges that Dr. Rosales misused or misappropriated public funds, close quote. One final note on this email. In the section below the outlined passages, Dr. Garrett makes a clear distinction between private and public funding sources, correctly assigning the Harrell and NEH funds to each category respectively. This begs the question, if he knew the difference between these types of funding sources, why didn't he make the same distinction in his talk as that written in this email sent only 5 days after his presentation?
The CCA contract language cited in the administrative determination says that, quote, faculty members acknowledge that in the exercise of academic freedom, they have a responsibility to be accurate and comprehensive in making reports, to be fair-minded in making interpretations and judgment, to respect the freedoms of other persons, and to make appropriate distinctions between statements of fact made as faculty subject matter specialists and opinions made as private citizens, end quote. If Dr. Garrett knew the differences between the grants, as stated in this email, but he still conflated them in his talk, is that being accurate or fair-minded? Was he, quote, comprehensive in making reports, end quote? If the preparation and research for his talk did not include reaching out to me or Professor Bond for clarification about the sources and uses of grants we wrote and directed, was he, quote, making the appropriate distinctions between statements of fact and opinions, end quote, when he repeatedly and erroneously states later in the talk, I was receiving reassigned time and supposedly directing media outlets to bend to partisan agendas, or when he went on the Terry Maxwell show on KNZR on December 3rd, 2019, and falsely stated, as if it was fact, that BC funds a fake news partisan website. According to an investigation that cost taxpayers at least $12,000, the claims made in the intro and talk were, at the very least, inaccurate. Additionally, the administrative determination produced at the end of this investigation stated that making baseless claims of fiscal impropriety did not rise to the expectations of professionalism that are outlined by the contract, KCCD board policy, and California Education Code.
For the record, faculty are not account managers at Bakersfield College. Only administrative deans and supervisors can serve as account managers organizationally. So by institutional definition, faculty cannot be account managers. We cannot initiate any funding expenditures without administrative approval, as shown by this page that illustrates the litany of signatures needed to initiate any payment from grant accounts. Moreover, no account manager, project director, or any other person associated with grants at Bakersfield College published or directed the publication of, quote, hit pieces, close quote, targeting Dr. Garrett, or misused public funds for partisan programming or news, as he asserts multiple times in his presentation.
Whoops, go back. Everyone in green is also getting paid by that same account manager. Oliver Rosales got paid $8,400 to do social justice last year, got paid $7,100 this year, also got reassigned time. I think he gets more reassigned time money, stipend, than anyone on campus pretty much, to do social justice activism.
Implying that Dr. Rosales is an account manager with discretionary control over various grant funding sources, and then highlighting dollar amounts he was paid for writing grants and coordinating grant programming, leads the public to believe he is self-dealing, which is not the case. And he was not paid for, quote, social justice activism or partisan activities. Additionally, at the time of Dr. Garrett's talk, Dr. Rosales was not getting any reassigned time at all, much less the most of anyone on campus. Reassigned time is when faculty have a portion or sometimes all of their teaching workload reassigned to non-teaching tasks or special projects by the administration. Early in the existence of the Social Justice Institute, the administration gave Dr. Rosales a 0.2 reassignment to coordinate faculty activities for the Institute. But that was not permanent, nor was it, quote, more than anyone else on campus, end quote. As per the KCCD-CCA contract, some department chairs get 0.8 reassigned time, and there are also some faculty who work on special projects for the administration who have gotten their entire load reassigned.
Ross, he gets a few hundred. Andrew Bond gets $2,100. She got $300 to $600 allotted her from the board. Yeah. And she actually is on a foundation scholarship thing, a fellowship from Kern Soul News, paid for by the grant that this person controls. They're all on payroll. Is that an organic discussion from the community? Now, I'm not saying that the account manager made them write these things. I don't think that at all. I think they all wrote that because they all feel that way because they're all in the same group. But it seems like there's a little, you make the decision. What do you think of that?
The dollar amounts mentioned are from disparate sources that Dr. Garrett did not disaggregate for the audience or viewer. Professor Bond was paid $2,100 for his role as a co-director for the National Endowment for the Humanities grant. And based on the amounts noted, presumably his reference to Octavio Barajas and Christine Cruz Boone's payments were for participation as faculty cohort members in the NEH program, the finances for which were managed by the district office and paid through payroll as shown. Paige Atkison was part of the Democracy and Informed Citizenship Student Fellowship Program at Kern Soul, which was supported by private foundations and again, not managed by any campus entity or individual.
So to recap, 4 examples of repressive tolerance, right? We have, we're not going to debate it, it's not worthy of debate. We have, no one's allowed to say these things or we'll report you to public safety. We have, hey, everyone needs to go to to mandatory training. And we have a news agency that's really on the payroll of someone here on campus.
Again, South Kern Soul is not on someone at Bakersfield College's payroll. The Harrell Foundation funding mentioned in Dr. Garrett's talk and tied to Kern Soul's student journalist mentorship activities was not managed by anyone on campus or any campus entity. Those funds were dispersed to Kern Soul via California Humanities as soon as the BC Foundation received the grant as a pass-through agency on behalf of Cal Humanities, which directs the Democracy and Informed Citizenship Initiative, a partnership also underwritten by the Mellon Foundation that works with multiple California community colleges. The BC Foundation did not manage the payroll of any external news agency in serving as a pass-through for this grant, as is inferred by Dr. Garrett's comment.
And also an attempt to clearly drive all the other news organizations in town. Suppression of any other views besides their own. Is that open and intellectual discussion, or is that Machiavellian backstage maneuvering?
Any public discussion or dialogue regarding vandalism at Bakersfield College was an open discussion. Any media coverage of vandalism at Bakersfield College was at the discretion of newsroom editors and not, quote, backstage Machiavellian maneuvering, end quote, or any other conspiratorial suggestion, as is alleged in this comment by Dr. Garrett.
We need to strip the proxies of their institutional authority. We do not need our own news media organization on the payroll that is secretly looking like it's not on payroll, but really is advocating for particular interests. That's inappropriate.
There's no news media organization on payroll advocating for a particular interest.
We ought to have the BC Foundation and its board ought to audit that account and any other account run by that account manager. Some of the board members are here today. I hope they'll do that.
Following Dr. Garrett's presentation, I spoke with the director of the BC Foundation regarding allegations made during Dr. Garrett's talk. What I told the director is that it was clear to me, having watched the recorded presentation by Dr. Garrett, that he didn't understand the role of the BC Foundation as a pass-through for grant funding, and that he was under the wrong impression that grant funds were being managed by an account manager on campus. This is another example of how Dr. Garrett's presentation would have been more accurate had he reached out prior to his public talk to ensure that his presentation was factually accurate and not speculative. If one suspects misuse of funds within the Kern Community College District, there are reporting procedures that will ensure that concerns of policy violations and or unlawful activity will be thoroughly investigated.
And we ought to remove that account manager, freeze those funds until we figure out what else is going on back there. Partisan politics paid for by taxpayer dollars is not okay.
As previously mentioned, faculty by institutional protocol are not account managers. Moreover, all taxpayer expenditures associated with grant activity that I've been privy to are all in accordance with KCCD and grant agency policy. Dr. Garrett's subsequent email following his talk to Andrew Bond and myself reiterated that he was alleging during his presentation that I was the account manager referenced throughout his talk. Moreover, Dr. Garrett's comment is a reflection of his repeated and false conflation between public and private funding streams throughout his September 12th presentation at Bakersfield College.
But no one should have their own personal media control agency to push their agendas, paid for by your dollars.
Kern Soul News is a youth-focused local news organization that gives student journalists the opportunity to learn more about the field while producing content related to rural populations in Kern County, such as Arvin, Delano, and Lamont. The focus on underserved and underrepresented in the media locales lets the students write on issues close to home. Kern Soul is not funded by tax dollars funneled through Bakersfield College, and nobody at BC is dictating what Kern Soul releases. They have reporters and an editorial team that determines what they run, and they are not some propaganda machine for any persons or entities at BC.
Update and defund, repudiate and defund Kern Soul News. That needs to be clearly stated. We do not support them, we will no longer fund them, and they do not get to write whatever they want under our name and our tax dollars. They want to do their own political stuff, that's fine, they can do that privately. They don't need to be supported by the local taxpayers. A lot of their money is grant money, I should clarify, but it's not all, right? They're getting work out of people that are getting reassigned time here and whatever else. Actually, honestly, I'm okay with political discussion. I'm great with political talk. I think that's healthy and fun. My concern is when it's all one direction, all one side, all the funding, everything goes one way, it's no longer discussion, it's propaganda, right? So I'm okay with a little political haggling back and forth. I think it's healthy. I just think we need to make sure that it's a fair and balanced playing field.
Excellent.
And limit, I mean, it should not be, we shouldn't have our own personal newspaper that we can publish in.
In these clips from Dr. Garrett's presentation, it's clear that he has misunderstood that Kern Soul News was not receiving any taxpayer funds from grants nor indirect support from release time afforded to faculty at BC. I hadn't received any reassigned time as faculty coordinator for the BC Social Justice Institute for at least 2 semesters by the time Dr. Garrett delivered his talk in the fall of 2019. And I was not doing work, nor was I controlling Kern Seoul News, as alleged again by Dr. Garrett.
The foundation money, a lot of it is, actually I would say most of it's not private money. Most of it is public grants and funds that people have donated. It is not mostly private money.
This statement is inaccurate. The funds held by the Bakersfield College Foundation are generated by private and corporate donations and sponsorships. The endowment also generates funds annually, but the endowed funds are product of donation.
Well, if we're going to keep giving tons of reassigned time and stipends to one particular group and one particular person, some of it is grant money, though.
Some people write grants for their particular events.
No one at Bakersfield College gave me anything with respect to grant compensation. Any grant compensation that I received during my tenure at Bakersfield College from any public or private grant agency was completely normative, with stipend funding based on KCCD union contract approved wages for faculty, and or was normative or suggested compensation for project directors by granting agencies. Moreover, when applying for any grant within the KCCD, you write an intent and approval to apply form outlining project team compensation, which has to go through a signature approval process all the way through campus administration and onward toward the Board of Trustees. Writing and managing grants takes time, effort, and expertise. Grant writers and project directors should be compensated for any labor associated with implementing special projects. This is especially true for faculty, as writing and implementing grants is not part of the official job description of faculty, but is special project labor outside of their normal contract.
After Dr. Garrett's talk, I reached out to him in a collegial email requesting that he meet me and Dr. Rosales to discuss the inaccuracies in his presentation. He replied in the email earlier displayed that he did not find us trustworthy and would prefer to continue communicating in email. Dr. Rosales and I were already upset about the fact that Dr. Garrett had given his talk without contacting us to ask us about grants and their uses on campus. But after being told that he did not trust us after the talk, we ceased contact with him and proceeded with drafting and filing complaints with Human Resources. In an email sent on September 24th, 2019, entitled "A Tale of Two Insults," Professor Miller came to Dr. Garrett's defense after his misrepresentation of Dr. Chris Cruz Boone was criticized on the faculty email listserv by members of her department. Beyond this defense, Professor Miller also reiterated claims about, quote, the ostensible financial ties between a faculty account manager, a student defaming Garrett in the media, and the very, quote, social justice, quote, movement whose influence on campus Garrett questioned, end quote. As stated numerous times already, there is no faculty account manager paying for the production of news articles at Kern Seoul News or using, quote, student proxies, end quote, to attack Dr. Garrett or Professor Miller. Miller also incorrectly refers to Paige Atkison as a, quote, former BC student, end quote, as Garrett did in his talk, when she was in fact a current student at the time that they were both accusing her of libel. I would also like to remind you that many of Dr. Garrett's comments regarding funding sources and their uses are not presented as an actual line of inquiry or questioning, but as declarative statements. And the statements are made recklessly and without a foundation built on thoroughly researched fact. The district office soon offered campus administrators the opportunity to host mediation between me, Dr. Rosales, Dr. Garrett, and Professor Miller. We requested that the video of the talk be taken down from the Liberty Institute's YouTube channel during the process as a show of good faith, but that request was denied. We agreed to participate anyway, coming to the table in good faith. We had several meetings with administrators, but separate from Dr. Garrett and Professor Miller. Soon after Dr. Rosales had his first and only meeting with Professor Miller, Dr. Garrett appeared on the Terry Maxwell Show on KNZR, local radio, and made the following statement.
And then there was also this concern about growing attitudes on campus, that there was, this sort of group of folks that were really trying very hard to push that foreign outside influence, that were writing grants and bringing in money to funnel money to social activist groups. And I got very concerned about seeing a narrative being created both on campus and in local media, the way that things were intentionally designed and released to the news. We've even got a fake news website that's largely funded by the college.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, there's grants that are being, the BC brand is used to acquire grant money, and that grant money is funneled to a fake news website to promote a partisan agenda. It's very disturbing.
It was at this point that the BC administration decided to end any attempts at mediation because Dr. Garrett violated the spirit of the process by reiterating allegations stated in his September 2019 public talk. One administrator even stated that the college may have to release a statement to counter the false claim made by Dr. Garrett on the radio, but none was issued. Instead, our complaints moved forward and were investigated by a lawyer from a firm outside of the district to maintain impartiality in his findings. The documents shown in this video were included as part of the extensive evidence we provided to both support our complaints and clear our names of any wrongdoing. The investigator concluded that we did not misappropriate grant funds, as was first alleged in Dr. Garrett's talk and complaint against us. As stated at the beginning, the purpose of this presentation has been strictly to set the record straight and counter an inaccurate, one-sided narrative that has been circulating since Dr. Garrett's talk on September 12, 2019.